This just might be the most famous town in Arizona, and the most infamous. This is Tombstone, and it's where the Wild West got its name. It's the town too tough to die, so it lived to tell about it. The shootout at the OK Corral only lasted 30 seconds, but it was enough time to immortalize 4 men in the Tombstone mystique. 140 years later, these streets still look the same, and yet different. Allen Street is still filled with saloons, like Big Nose Kate's and the Crystal Palace. But new claims have been staked, like tasting rooms by local wineries. There's even an award-winning brewery over on Tough Nut. New mixed in with the old. Tombstone will always be connected to its storied past. But there are a few new places hoping to be part of the narrative. Tombstone has a lot to share, past, present, and future. And there's an adventure for everyone.
I'd like to welcome you guys to Tombstone. Welcome to Tombstone Monument Guest Ranch.
Before you even cross under the sign to the ranch, you know you have entered a world away. You can see it and even feel it. We're about 3 miles outside Tombstone, surrounded by the Dragoon Mountains, historic mines, desert brush, and big skies. We're in true cowboy country, and this is a true working ranch.
Truthfully think what makes us unique from the rest is the history, as well as the staff that we keep.
Michelle DeSplinter manages the ranch.
It's an old silver mine community, town, used to be homesteaded, cattle ranch. Just lots of the Old West history comes from here.
The ranch has come full circle. It was founded by the Trapman family in the 1880s as a cattle ranch. They raised Spanish cattle that was first brought over on Columbus's second voyage. Known as America's first cattle, they are once again being raised on the ranch.
So the cattle experience here, it's just something that people don't usually get. People don't think about it. You think about a dude ranch, you think about horseback riding. But actually working together with family or other guests that you've never met before, it's just a whole new experience, moving the cattle and getting them to go where you want.
You can just go horseback riding, but you can also experience what it's like to be a working cowboy.
Whether you go out with me or Hank or one of the other wranglers and you help fix a fence, you help check cows up in the mountains, or everything in between, really. There's always stuff to do. I mean, it's over 10,000 acres, so there's a lot of area to ride, a lot of canyons and dips and washes for a cow to hide, and no matter what, you can't get there on an ATV or UTV, so you got to get on there with a horse.
Whether you choose to take slow, scenic rides, fast rides, or help wrangle cattle, your horse is based on your age, height, weight, and riding experience.
So to get this gal going, what we're going to do is we're going to kick her on both sides with the heels of her feet.
You'll probably want to bring your phone for the amazing photo ops. But there are some rules about that.
We don't want to ringtone spooking a horse. Don't want you to drop your phone, get stepped on, or something like that, okay? So my personal favorite thing about being out here with people is when people put the phones away and they just look around on the back of a horse, realize where they're at, and they get to enjoy themselves and maybe go back to that real interhuman connection we actually have with history and wildlife and the land. I think we've kind of forgotten that as humans.
The ranch itself is built in the image of the Old West. The guest rooms line the main street. There are 4 different types, from standard rooms to premium suites, all individually themed and decorated.
You could stay in Miss Kitty's, you could stay in a bordello, you could stay in jail. It's decorated as though somebody's trying to break out of jail. It's all done with plaster work, but it's quite authentic looking. There is a little bit of a jail cell in there and handcuffs, but I won't give you the key to those.
The Dock Holiday Suite comes with a king-size bed, shower and tub, as well as a kitchenette and a patio that looks out to the Dragoon Mountains.
I Our dining is a little bit different here. It's called Shefflin's Restaurant, or it says at Shefflin's out front. His name was Ed Shefflin. The dining room, we serve 3 meals a day. Breakfast is a buffet, or we're doing plated right now due to COVID. For lunch, we serve 1 meal per lunchtime, and for dinner, we do the same.
There is also a real saloon.
Our saloon is built over top of the old Trapman Saloon. Now, back in the 1800s, that was a hot spot.
The saloon's just a nice place at the end of the day for people to gather. On weekends, we have live music 3 nights a week. We used to play cards, but right now we can't safely do that, so we're waiting for those mandates to lift so we can go back to playing Faro, as well as 5-card draw, and the other game was Texas Hold'em.
There's even an escape hatch.
Trapman decided to keep that root cellar in there as ambiance for our saloon. That root cellar is original from the 1800s. They put a glass top on it. Now, that's where you'd put your women and children in case of Indian attack. Also stored your fruits and vegetables because it's cooler below ground.
After a good night's rest, you wake up to the smell of coffee brewing on a campfire.
I do coffee, rain, shine, sleet, or snow.
You haven't had a real cup of coffee until you've tried this. Your personal barista is Arizona Bill, ranch historian and color commentator.
History is like an addiction. The more you get, the more you want. And Arizona has more cowboy history than any other state in the United States. Texas has got the Alamo, Sanchez Center, Goliad, but Arizona's more about the cowboy.
Arizona Bill first came to Tombstone Monument Ranch as a guest, and he loved every minute of it.
Well, you know, on a vacation, you want all you can get, every minute. So the thing is, you get up before daylight and you go to bed way after dark. And then when you get home, you have to rest up from your vacation. I know when we came out here 2 weeks in April and 2 weeks in October for 8 years straight. And the wife and I, let me tell you, we burned that candle at both ends. When we got back home, we'd have to rest up a week to get over that vacation.
While there are modern conveniences, coming to Tombstone Monument Ranch is like walking into the Old West.
I think this ranch is super important because, well, not only is it a destination vacation, but it gives people the opportunity to experience the West. What it used to be like, yeah, you still have your creature comforts, you still have air conditioning, you still have a bar you can come belly up to and get something to drink. We feed you well, but they get to experience things they wouldn't. You'd be surprised the amount of guests that come out here at night, walk to the end of the building and go, oh my God, look at the stars. It's just, it's an experience.
You see right here, you can see the buds. They're little white ladybanks roses. They come in clusters. And there are 2 things that'll happen. Number 1 is all those little buds will just turn into flowers. Little clusters and a little tiny flower about the size of a quarter. Beautiful little things. And then the smell will come. And I tell people this all the time. It's a beautiful thing to behold, but it smells better.
Just a short block away from Dusty Allen Street and that famous shootout reenactment stands the world's largest rose tree, shading this lovely courtyard.
It'll be 90 degrees here in June, and you can come out under the rose tree and you can sit like we're sitting today, and it'll be 75, 80 degrees. It'll be beautiful. So it's actually a very pleasant place to spend a warm afternoon in Arizona. And those flowers, they just start.
Jeff DeVere owns and runs the Rose Tree Museum.
A small clipping, probably like one that we sell here at the museum, came over in a trunk from Scotland in 1885 with a woman by the name of Mary Gee. Apparently she gave one of them, which is this one, to her friend Amelia Adamson, who owned the arcade boarding house. And they planted it out back behind the patio, which is where it is today, next to a woodshed. And that was, they say, 1885.
Like this rose tree, Jeff's roots in Tombstone run deep.
My great-grandparents bought this in 1920, and my great-grandfather put the rose tree onto the post and beam system. And it very quickly took off. Within about 10 or 15 years, they renamed the arcade boarding house to the Rose Tree Inn because they had this very large rose tree in the back. That's when Robert Ripley came out, and I was thinking it's 35. He came out and he declared it the world's largest rose tree and wrote it up, and that's how it became famous.
Today, it covers between 8,000 and 9,000 square feet, but getting an exact measurement is a bit tricky.
Well, it's not flat. So it's kind of a dimensional problem. If you take the square area it's covering, it's somewhere between 6,000 and 7,000 square feet. But it flows over the edges, it flows onto the roof where we have to prune it back, and it also rolls. And it's now probably some 30 feet into the air.
The boarding house shut down in the 1950s, reopening later as a museum.
And it's been a museum ever since 1964. We recently put in some very nice suites, so you can actually stay here now.
You can even plant a piece of this beautiful history in your own yard.
Apparently, Lady Banks roses love the sun. They grow all over Arizona. They're in Phoenix, they're in Tucson, this one here, and they grow quite large. You could buy a rose bush here and you could plant it in your backyard, and it could get bigger than this one.
And coming from Tombstone, it's guaranteed to grow larger than life. Arizona Highways TV is brought to you by APS, making every day brighter, and the Arizona Office of Tourism.
Prospector's Monument, in my opinion, has to do with not only is Ed Shefflin buried there, and that was his thing. He was a silver miner here in Tombstone. That's where Tombstone got its name. When he came west, they told him the only thing he was going to find out west was his tombstone. When he struck silver, that's what he named it. But the shape of the monument up the hill is the shape of the statue or structure they would have built once they staked their claim. They stuck their stick in the ground, they put rocks around it to hold it up, and then they put their claim on that stick. And that's how they staked their claim, and that's why it's that shape.
Tombstone may have started with a silver claim, but John Marshall says his smoker is worth its weight in gold.
We opened up in October of 16, and that thing's run non-stop at a minimum of 5 days a week, 24 hours a day since we opened. We have our ribs, chickens, we smoke our potatoes. They're a minimum of a pound each. Beef brisket flats, bone-in pork butt, and of course more ribs. So this smoker will hold about 500 pounds of meat.
With big portions and big flavors, there is nothing puny about this barbecue joint, except the name.
Welcome to Puny John's Barbecue, located here at 11 South 4th Street in downtown Tombstone, Arizona, right next to the OK Corral.
Notorious nicknames are a hallmark of Tombstone. The more colorful, the better the backstory.
Started out with 6 cases of beer and a couple pints of Jägermeister. There's a couple more cases of beer and a couple more pints of Jägermeister. Next morning I got up for work, and my wife's like, you need to call this person and apologize, you need to call that person and apologize. And she got on the phone behind me and said, yeah, it looked like John this morning, only punier. So Puny John stuck.
John even has a unique name for his style of smoked meats. Awesome all-around Q. The story behind that is all over the map.
Grew up on the East Coast, born in Philadelphia. 5 years in Pennsylvania, 5 years in Florida, 12 years on the Eastern Shore of Maryland. So I traveled all up and down the I-95 corridor, so North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia barbecue. And I joined the military, and we went everywhere. My first base was Texas, and then we were in Oklahoma. From there we went to Kansas City, St. Louis, Memphis. So anywhere that was famous for barbecue, we went and I tried it. So I tried to take a little bit of each portion of the country, tried to kind of meld them together into our own version.
Then, one of his tours took him to South Korea.
I started cooking for my fellow airmen on Sundays, and we started out with about 20 or 30 people, and after about 6 months, I was cooking for half the base. It was like 200 people every weekend, and that was the genesis for the restaurant.
Puny John makes every recipe from scratch, including his 6 sauces, with saucy names to match.
For the tenderfoot, we have our wussy sauce. That's our basic ketchup, brown sugar, and a bunch of other stuff, but without any of the spices that we put in. And then our ass of fire sauce is the hottest. It's double the amount of habanero, and then we buy an extract of ghost pepper, which is 5 million Scoville units.
That one's not for the faint of heart, nor is his Boot Hill burger.
You eat one of those, it feels like you're gonna have a heart attack. Boot Hill Cemetery is right down the street. A Boot Hill burger is a 1-pound patty, and it's about 2 inches thick. We smoke them for about a half an hour, and then I finish them off on a grill. A little bit of rub, a little bit of sauce.
From his popular brisket to the sides, to the fall-off-the-bone ribs, John says it all comes from the same place.
Everything here is from the heart.
Molly, come here. This is a big deal to her, okay? Come here. Come here. Get up here. I sell at least 50,000 bottles a year.
John Fields is a reinvention of himself. A former RV salesman,
Diesel motorhomes, $100,000, you know.
turned sarsaparilla slinger.
Let's say it would be the original root beer. This would be a separate recipe similar to what you would have found exactly in the late 1700s. There is a hint of carbonation here, only for preservation. Back then when they made it, there was none.
John first made a name for himself around town, walking his dog.
Here's the story.
Patrons sitting outside the Four Deuces Saloon were curious about the man they saw walking up and down the street.
Who is this guy? He's new in town. What does he do? And the guy said, well, that's John and his dog. So this goes on for months. And I'm walking back down the street, and there's some gal on the porch says, well, who is this guy? I see him all the time. And the same guy that had been drinking had a few beers, and he said, well, that's Johnny One Dog. And it stuck.
While on his walks, Johnny One Dog came across a puzzling window display.
General store had a display of Sioux City sarsaparilla. So I kept walking past that with the dog, and I kept thinking, well, something's funny here. Just something's just not right.
Then it hit him.
Tombstone was more famous than Sioux City, Iowa. So they had their own sarsaparilla.
After some research, Johnny partnered with a microbrewery in Kansas City to make sarsaparilla especially for him.
And I had friends taste it, and they just went crazy over it.
He scraped together enough money to buy a pallet of the specialty soda, made up labels and packaging emblazoned with the likes of Doc Holliday and the Earps.
All of a sudden, I got 20 accounts here, okay? All of a sudden, I'm selling like, oh, jeez, I'm gonna say 5,000 bottles a month.
Johnny picked up a secondhand fridge, turned a rolling TV cart into a bar, and set up shop in this old stagecoach repair garage right across from the OK Corral.
And I put up my sign, my hours, because it says from about till around, okay? Put on the old cowboy music, and here we go. This has gone for 10 years, and it keeps bigger and bigger. There are people from 4 or 5 states now that drive here and buy cases.
But Johnny has no plans to go Main Street.
You get into mass production and it screws it all up.
Johnny prefers his one-man, one-dog operation. personally delivering his bottled soda.
Sarsaparilla is a root, and the correct pronunciation back then, and we're talking here in the 1700s, was Sarsaparilla. And they would make this up in barrels, wooden barrels. Take one to the general store, one to the saloon. Little kids would pick up a whiskey bottle and they'd fill it for them. And it became like the soft drink of the West. I'm independent, not going to get rich, but I get to meet people every day from all over the world. All over the world. And I enjoy it.
Johnny One Dog is a smooth salesman and one cool cat. Arizona Highways TV is brought to you by APS, making every day brighter, and the Arizona Office of Tourism.
Now, after the earthquake in 1887 and all this down here dried up, most of the people moved into Tombstone because that's where the action was. Well, they kept the old Trapman open as a stage stop between Tombstone, St. David, and Benson. Supposedly, that's where Doc Holliday boarded a coach the morning that him and Earp were accused of robbing. And most likely did, because the Earps didn't come here to save Tombstone. They come here to get rich just like everybody else.
Ready to saddle up? Or saunter through the streets of Tombstone and watch the gunfight at the OK Corral? There is plenty to experience in this town that defined the Wild West. If you're ready for some real cowboy action, then you need to book a stay at the Tombstone Monument Guest Ranch, where you can wrangle cattle or go for a long, slow horseback ride surrounded by the Dragoon Mountains. Either way, you'll get an authentic experience.
So you can actually stay here, sit under the rose tree, have a cup of coffee in the morning, a glass of wine at night.
If you want to stay in Tombstone proper, then booking a suite at the Rose Tree Museum may be the perfect spot to surround yourself in the beauty of the world's largest rose tree and the history of one of Tucson's oldest original families. For some big barbecue, make sure to hit up Puny John's. And don't leave town without stopping by Johnny One Dog's to say hello to Molly and sample his Tombstone Sarsaparilla. You can even take home a souvenir 4-pack. And don't forget to let us know about your Tombstone adventure. We'll see you on the next Arizona Highways.